All right. I think we're live. I hope we are. All right. Everything looks good. Just adjust the camera a little bit. I had to adjust my chair. I have it on these little razors because I don't like it. I don't like chairs too low. I have a bit of a gamey leg, so it makes it difficult to sit in a position where my knees are higher than my hips for extended periods of time. So I use the risers, and my chair toppled off of one of them, and we nearly had a catastrophe. So catastrophe averted, thankfully. All right. My dear unknown friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ignatian. Happy to have you back, for those of you joining live, and for any of you who are catching up with the VOD. And it looks like Dave Tsunami will have to catch the VOD. So, and Godspeed to you as well, Dave Tsunami. I'm happy to, hopefully we'll hear from you in the comment section once you've had a chance to go through the video. I'm not sure how long we're going to run. I pray that we keep it to at least 2 hours or less. And for all I know, we probably will, because this may or may not end up an incredibly emotional episode. We will see. We will see. Hopefully I've had enough time to process everything that I'm going to share with you all. But before we do that, just want to, I guess we'll go quick into the plugs. And yeah, I didn't have enough time to finish setting it up. Oh, no. There we go. Okay. All right. Real quick. For those of you who are into the tech side of live streams or YouTube or what have you, I will be switching over to StreamYard going forward. OBS is, for what it is, as a free tool, it's very good. For what it is, it's very basic, but a lot of moving parts, and also rather resource heavy. There are some live streams where OBS is behaving in a way that makes it really difficult to go too long, because even though I keep my laptop on the charger, it drains the battery while it's on the charger sometimes, which is something that I ran into when I was using Zen browser as our browser of choice for one of the streams. I was like in a race to end the stream before my battery died out on my laptop. So my hope is, that StreamYard will be a little less resource intense, especially if I use it on an ad blocking browser and a tracker blocking browser. I'm not aware of StreamYard doing anything to try to harm one's computer if you're using Brave or similar browsers, because those trackers and everything, they also eat up memory, and memory eats up power. So But yeah, going forward after this week's stream, we'll be starting to use StreamYard. So you'll probably see somewhere over here, or up in one of the corners, um, the watermark and the unfortunate forceful plug that is mandatory for free users. And so with that, we'll segue into into plugging everything. So if you do not want to have to suffer with a watermark of a third party on the screen, and if you would like to assist me in affording the subscription long term so that we can continue to do these in as good of quality as we can, I would encourage you all, if you don't know already, I have a Substack. The Substack is sort of a companion to the live stream, and the live stream acts as a companion to the publication. It's called the Sophiurgy. There's a link in the description below for the latest article. Our latest article is Duo Corda ut Unum, which is my probably my longest essay to date, where we do a meditation on microchimerism, which was the subject of our last live stream. Sort of touching on a few disparate select meditations from the essay, or that are brought about by the essay. But if you want to read the essay itself, please go over to the Substack. Link is in the description. It'll take you directly to the essay. Again, all essays are free to read. And so you can support my work both here on YouTube and on Substack by becoming a paid monthly subscriber to the Sophiurgy. In addition to reading every post, you'll gain access to audio versions of them that are recorded by myself. There's no AI voice clone narrating to you. I will never clone my voice with the so-called artificial intelligence. So every syllable uttered in the audio versions is recorded by myself. All of my stuff that I use to record is right over there, tucked along the opposite side of the room. Either tomorrow or the day after, so either tomorrow or Friday, I will be recording the audio version of Duo Corda ut Unum. So if you don't like listening to the AI generated version that Substack processes and puts up there, and if you want to support a human being, this is the tier for you. Also, if you, I forgot to edit it. If you also, boy, I'm so tongue twisted today. My apologies. See, an AI wouldn't mess up, wouldn't stutter, wouldn't stumble to speak. So, in addition to having access to all of the audio versions of my essays, being a paid subscriber also gains you access to the option of personal correspondence. You can write to me via snail mail. You can handwrite it. You can typewrite it. The idea is it should be by hand, or at least by typewriter, and not by email, and not by typing it out in Microsoft Word, printing it off, and sending it in. The idea is that you will want is to have analog correspondence. And so there, it says P.O. Box pending, but I have a happy announcement to make, which I don't recall if I made the announcement in a previous live stream, but I have finally a PO box. It's finally ready to go. I need to double check my settings to make sure that when I go to post it in the subscribers chat, that it will only show for paid subscribers. But yeah, there will be a thread in the Substack chat with the PO box address. So if you want to write to me about anything in particular, or if you want to pick my brain about my perspective on X, Y, and Z, just trying to keep it within the general subject matter of everything that we talk about here on the channel and on Substack. I generally try to avoid speaking on politics insofar as it doesn't intersect with Catholic social teaching and the subject matter that we talk about here. Every once in a while, we probably will, just like in Tom Berg's Meditations on the Tarot, even though he's not like specifically political, he does sort of speak about some general things that animate certain ideologies that spring out of materialism and technologism and things of that nature. So, that's where I try to limit my interaction and dissemination of my opinions concerning political affairs. Not to mention, I have a very strong devotion to Our Lady, and the Americas were given to her, and she made it known at Guadalupe. And so, in my mind, the founders of America usurped this continent from her, and I would rather see Lady Liberty drown in New York Harbor, and Our Lady placed on the dais instead. And we'll leave it at that. Also, if you're a paid subscriber, you'll gain access to receiving an annual print edition of the year's essays. So like starting the beginning of next year, anyone who is a paid subscriber will receive all of the essays from 2026. And then, as we continue on, at the beginning of 2028, you'll receive a print edition of all of the essays from 2027. And my goal is to do it in a zine style, so it's hand assembled, sort of grassrootsy looking, what have you. And I've done some experiments with my printer to see if I can feed newsprint through it, and thankfully I can. So for paid subscribers, they will receive at the start of next year the first edition of the Sophiurgist in print with all of 2026's essays in a zine style, cardstock cover, newsprint text block. I think it'll be great, and I hope you all will enjoy having something to physically hold in your hand so you don't have to stare at a screen. But then again, if you don't want to stare at a screen, you can listen to the audio narrations. Haha. Another way to support the channel is to go over to the tip jar. You can go and buy me a coffee. This is the page for the buy me a coffee. As I mentioned in a previous live stream, I am extending. I'm extending a goal from June. So for the month of July, any tips that come through the Buy Me a Coffee are going to go to Metten Abbey in Germany as a thank you for Father Michael's assistance in doing some research on our behalf concerning the Saint Benedict medal and the mural that Dom Prosper Garanger refers to in his origin story of the sacramental. So again, month of July, any tips that come through, buy me a coffee at the end of the month. I will take those funds and I will send them to Metten Abbey in Bavaria. All right, and last but not least, although I'm considering maybe phasing this out and just sticking to the first 3 tiers. But if there is anybody out there who would actually be seriously interested in joining the Societas Sophiurgica, it is the founders tier on the Substack. The contribution that members of the Societas would go towards helping fund acquisition of research materials. There's some things out there in print and out of print that are quite cost prohibitive that I think that I've been eyeing, that I have a suspicion based on everything else that I've read would be very pertinent to the research that I do for my essays and these videos. And I don't have access to the PDFs, and I would rather try to keep things above board for the sake of integrity. So if there is anyone who is still interested, I'll give it to the end of July for anyone who is interested in joining the Societas Sophiurgica. Becoming a member at that level, it's flexible. You can spend anywhere between $50 to $150 a year. It's up to you. And by joining that tier, you gain all the benefits of a regular paid subscription, with the added bonus of participating in a monthly research session, which will probably be styled like a book club, even though it will be, the idea is that it'll be a bit more substantial than a book club. Like we'll actually be reading passages from things, and we will be having, the idea is to have active discussion and to look up other primary and secondary sources relevant to the things that we're reading at the time, and sharing links during the session. Like I want it to genuinely be like an actual research session. Minimum ideal requirement is that you be a professed member of an apostolic church, whether that's Catholicism, Orthodoxy, Coptic Christianity, what have you. Not to Anglicans, that's a little hit or miss. But Protestants would probably have a really hard time being a member of the Societas. So ideally, apostolic, being part of an apostolic church. But we'll see. So, for the remainder of July, I'll leave this tier up. And if there are people that do end up deciding they want to join at that level, that'll be then I'll keep it. But if at the end of July, if there's nobody interested in the Societas Sophiurgica founders tier, then I'll just discontinue it. Which I don't mind. Like either way, I don't mind. I'm not particularly attached to things as much as I was, and we'll get into that because it ties into a lot of stuff. So I think that finishes the selfless plugging, much to everyone's happiness, I imagine. Sometimes it's kind of cringy when people plug their stuff, but again, anything anything anyone's willing to chip in to help keep things afloat and keep things going, it'll be most helpful and most appreciated, and you will all be added to my book of charity. All right, real quick, we'll check chat. Christina Marie, thank you for coming on. Hello, I got your message about my astrology cosmology program, and we'll get back to you this week. Wonderful. I'm really excited to learn more. I might send you another quick message about that. So let's see, going to dinner time. I'll check in after. Okay. Well, enjoy your dinner with your family. I don't know why I feel like asking, like, what are you all having for dinner tonight? I like learning about people's family dinner traditions, and I think it's really a shame how family dinner culture, especially here in the States, has just sort of completely deteriorated to sitting in front of a television screen and not facing each other at all, and eating in isolation despite being in the room together, or having the phones at the table, or the dining room table being sort of like a truck stop. You just come and go. You just come and go as you please, buffet style. So I think it's really important, and really necessary to sort of rediscover the part of the domestic liturgy that is dinner time with your family. Conscious. It's a very conscious participation in family life, and it is an analog. It is an analog of the sacrament of the Eucharist, especially in a Catholic home. And so skipping out on the communal nature of a family meal is quite sad. It's sad not to have that as part of your domestic liturgy. All right, so I'm back. I'm back from my adventure. I left the Hobbit hole, left the Shire, went out into the expanse of Eriador, and spent some time in Rivendell. I spent some time in Rivendell in contemplative silence, which was the first time that I have ever made it to an Ignatian retreat. I had been recommended to go on one many times in the past, and especially with everything that happened during the pandemic, I never was able to go when I had at least the financial means to make it happen. But with the pandemic and working in healthcare, it made it rather difficult to get the logistics down, and I don't know whether or not they were hosting them during that time. Even though I do know that they were still having public masses, sort of car park outdoor masses during the early part of the pandemic, and then reopening the chapel later on when the severity of the disease was becoming lesser than it was at the start. So I'm still processing everything that happened during the retreat. But one of the things that I went into the retreat with was a certain question, and it was a question that dealt with some recent events, some events that happened leading up to my departure for the retreat. Now, for a long time, I've been what now? It's been 14 years. I think it'll be 15. My 15th year of nursing will begin in August of this year. I graduated from nursing school in August of 2011, and waited until after the holiday season because I wasn't able to take my NCLEX until November of that year, just 2 or 3 days before Thanksgiving. So I waited until the holiday season was over before I applied to a facility that I had worked previously as a CNA. So I already knew the residents and knew most of the coworkers there. So it was a really blessed opportunity to have a job almost guaranteed for me right out of nursing school. So yes, it's been 14 years now. And in this time, I've experienced much. I've seen much. I've doubted much. And have had a lot of ups and downs. And it's a profession that I myself didn't necessarily choose of my own. It was sort of chosen for me by both circumstances, as well as by loved ones who wanted to make sure that I would be set for as comfortable a life as can be expected of someone who technically didn't go to a college. I went to a trade school center, and it was pure nursing. We focused only on nursing. And, off and on, when I was younger, I would sometimes resent the fact that I didn't get to choose my profession. And in some small ways, this channel and the Substack are in certain respects, especially early on, were this sort of outgrowth of something to help with my impetus, this natural impetus that I have to create. I was always very creative, and so now since the retreat, my determination to be creative is even stronger. So what was it? So anyhow, just to kind of speed up this little tangent. Let's see. The reveal? No, you, astral counterpoint. You have not missed the reveal. Thankfully, you're just in time. I'm just laying the tracks down. So you haven't missed it. We were just talking. I was just talking about my background in nursing, because it plays a part in all of this. But to finish this brief little tangent, and I guess I'll just recap it. I didn't necessarily choose nursing. It was somewhat Are we there? All right, I see the bar moving now. Go ahead, hit one. Hit one on your keyboard if you can hear me. 0 if you cannot hear me. I can see my levels here. There we go. All right, good. Okay. Oh, all right, good. Just another reason why I am gonna switch over to StreamYard. I didn't have enough time to set up StreamYard before we went live, so here we are on OBS. So yeah. Anyhow. All right. All right, so part of this channel and everything that I had garnered from reading Tom Berg eventually bubbled to a head, most especially during the pandemic, and just as a way to have an outlet to get my since things were locked down and everything. That's when I decided to start this channel. Of course, this is I think about 2 years into the pandemic, because it's been 4 years that I've been doing this channel now. I began it in 2022. So yeah, so we're about halfway through the pandemic when I started this channel. And since then, I have had this incredible experience that I'm going to share with everyone today. Now, first and foremost, one thing that needs to be understood by everybody who's watching is in healthcare in the United States. I can't speak for any other country, but in the United States, we have a law called the Health Information Privacy Protection Act. It's also known as HIPAA. And the basic idea is that patients have a right to their medical records and data being private, and that there needs to be a regulated chain of custody of the information between practitioners and providers. In this way, patients are protected from any potential fraud, or any abuse of their health information. Some people even today still really dislike this particular law, and at the time there were a bunch of actually really funny political cartoons in all the major newspapers that actually kind of poked fun at both sides of the debate before it was put to a vote in Congress. But it was passed, and so now, if you work in healthcare, you are required to be very stingy with who you give a patient's health information to. So because of this, even though the party involved, the patient involved, has now passed away, I'm still not going to be very candid about their identity and the identity of their families and the identity of those with whom I work or who I work for, just to protect everybody's privacy. I did make an attempt to locate the contact information post facto of the family members to try to inquire of them if they would be okay with me sharing details. Sadly, I was not able to find the contact information of the family members, but so names will be changed. The names of the geography, the people involved are going to be fudged and changed again to protect privacy. And I won't go into too many details about some of the family dynamics involved, again, out of respect for their privacy, the surviving family's privacy, so that way the what is really important for us here is more front and centered as well. So I work in a health and rehabilitation facility. This means that I work on the second floor, and usually on the second floor of these types of facilities, we take care of a mixture. We take care of a mixture of people at various stages in their recovery. Sometimes they don't recover, and they end up having to live with us. So it's a mixture of what's called long-term care, or LTC, and skilled care, which is also called SNF. You'll sometimes hear nurses call it SNF. Skilled patients tend to be short-term. They're there for some rehabilitation, or sometimes they'll have like an infection. They'll be receiving some form of antibiotic IV therapy or other type of medical therapy, or they have fractures and they're waiting for their fractures to heal and their strength to be built back up. The rest of them have dementia or Alzheimer's to various degrees, or they are completely alert and oriented, and they just, unfortunately, aren't able to care for themselves safely at home. And so there's a mixture. And every once in a while, they'll send me someone who has a very short life expectancy. These types of patients are often referred to as hospice patients. Hospice is a type of care that's provided in the healthcare field. It's also known as palliative care. So a lot of cancer patients, if they're in their end stages of cancer, will sometimes be on palliative care or hospice care. And so usually with the goal of hospice patients, the goal is comfort, to provide them reasonable comfort based upon their current condition. And so for some, it means they may not need much in the way of, say, pain management. In others, they may have such excruciating pain that they cannot interact with their family in any meaningful way. And so in those instances, we will provide for them medications that will assist them in pain management so that they can have more meaningful interaction with their family. It can happen sometimes that someone who reaches a certain point in their end of life, that they will have so much pain and discomfort that it prevents them from being at rest for their final moments. And so sometimes in those situations, the hospice provider will prescribe a certain medication regimen to help reduce their respirations. And the reason that they do this is because when some people who are in their last moments, within sometimes people can be in that state for a month. I've taken care of hospice patients who have been a month in the sort of comatose stage, but with the high respirations and other visual indicators that they are in agony of some kind or another. But it can also they can also last for maybe only a few days. So I've seen a wide spectrum of the very end, and so their respirations can get up into the 30s or higher. And there's medication that we give in those situations to help bring their respiration rate down, which helps to calm the heart, because the heart's also going a million miles an hour in those instances. And sometimes that's enough to bring them out of their comatose state, to have what's sometimes called the surge, which is this day or two of pure of like normal cognition. Um, so there's all kinds of things that can happen during end of life care. Our story involves the end of life care provided to someone that I'm gonna name them. Gosh, I need to pick a name of someone who I'm not currently caring for. We'll call him Jerry. I don't have anybody I take care of who's named Jerry, so we'll call him Jerry. Now Jerry was barely middle-aged, barely. Still quite young. Probably the youngest patient I've ever cared for in my 14 years of geriatric nursing. He came with organ failure, and he was given a prognosis of 2 months. So he had less than 2 months left to live. I won't go too much into the details about exactly what he had going on that caused him to have organ failure, or which organ it was. Again, for privacy reasons. So I had been away. I was on my weekend off when they had been admitted. And so my first day caring for this person, one of my CNAs, my nurse's aides, she came asking for my assistance turning and repositioning this person in bed so that they could perform care. So we go in, and I introduce myself, and I help them turn on their side, and they look over, and they see this hanging around my neck. Now, most of the facilities I've worked in, I've had very few patients who are Catholic. Most of the people I've taken care of have been anywhere between anywhere between atheist to Protestant. Very few have been Catholic, and of the patients I've had who were Catholic, they either no longer necessarily believed, but it was hard to say whether they had officially apostatized, or if they were just lapsing for a time. all the way to they used to go to church, but they hadn't been to church in years, and they didn't and that they didn't have any priests to come and visit them and bring them the sacraments. So, and this Mr. Jerry, I given that I live in Jerry Falwell land, the mecca of non-denominational Pentecostal uh, evangelical Christianity. There are two Catholic parishes, and one is a charismatic parish, and the other the priest collar. So Catholicism is on very thin ice here in this town. so, um, so I didn't have any. I had my anticipation was that he was just probably another either agnostic, atheist, or Protestant non-denom. So I helped turn him on his side for care, and he looks at my medal, and he goes, "Is that a miraculous medal?" Um, Most of the time in my 14 years of nursing, when someone asks me what it is, they ask me, "What is that?" They don't ask, "Is that the miraculous medal?" Because most people don't know what it is who aren't raised Catholic, let alone Orthodox. I'd imagine most Orthodox probably have an idea what it is. I've even seen some YouTubers who are Orthodox that wear this, which begs a lot of questions that they won't answer in the comment sections of their videos when I ask it. And so I was taken aback. I was quite shocked that he identified it by name and was asking um, a clarification if indeed that's what it was. They probably had never seen one this large, so they probably just were making sure that's what it was. But I was flabbergasted that he knew what it was by name. And so I said, yeah. And I asked, are you Catholic? And he kind of he giggled, and with a little sly smile on his face, he said, "Well, you could say I'm half Catholic, 50% Catholic." And so we finished up what we were doing, and I said, and I told him, well, when I have some downtime, I'll be back because I have some questions. And he laughed and he said, "Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I always like having someone to talk to." It's like, all right, cool. I'll see you later on. So I go about the rest of my to do the rest of my duties, and so I get a little bit of downtime in the afternoon after med pass to go in and to inquire further. And so over a period of a few days, I got to learn, I got to know more about Jerry. I got to learn about his personal history and everything that's kind of led to that moment. And so he shared, and this will probably be there's at least two pertinent details that are relevant for the remainder of the story, but everything else is going to be kept off the lips, again for privacy purposes. Um, so what I can say is when they turned 40, Jerry when he turned 40, Jerry had a very traumatic event occur where um, his wife just up left, abandoned him, no note, no explanation, no nothing. and left for and became an adulteress. And the second pertinent detail is that in his attempt to cope with his newfound situation, he had turned to alcoholism, which he tried to um, to kick the habit of on his own without support, cold turkey, a number of times. And so that probably led to there's a lot of trauma that can occur to your internal organs when you go hard enough and then cut cold turkey. It doesn't have to be alcohol; it could be anything. But that cold turkey quitting can really wreak internal damage depending on the substance involved, and alcohol is one of those. Um, so that probably explains why why he was left with 2 months to live. So um, now during this time that he was on and off of the drink, he um, he prefaced it by saying, "Please don't, please." Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. So I asked him what he meant by half Catholic. What do you mean by half Catholic? And so I asked him to, like, was your mom Catholic and your dad not, or vice versa? So, like, what does it mean? He's like, so he said, no, no, I was raised Pentecostal, both parents, and I could always tell that there just wasn't something right about it. Could never put my hand on it, but and so like eventually I just stopped going to church, and I still believed in God, and I still believed in Jesus, but like there was just something about it that something about the Pentecostal charismatic stuff that I just couldn't get on board with. Um, and from there he he managed to come across some of the videos on YouTube from Father Chad Ripperger. I know for some he's rather controversial. Um, is most especially post consecrations, post the July 1st consecrations, by saying that there's no crisis in the church, and it's like, um, uh, just as a side note, please pray for Father Ripperger that his current position on there not being a crisis in the church stance doesn't negatively affect um, his exorcism ministry, um, because he ought to he should know better. He should know better than to turn a blind eye to everything that's going on. Um, so please pray for Father Chad Ripperger, that he may be protected from his current held erroneous opinion, that it does not tend towards the detriment of his ministry as an exorcist, and that his patients may still be delivered despite it. Anyhow, Jerry had watched some of his videos and started to look into Catholicism. And he said over time he started to realize that yeah, I think this is it. I think this explains why I couldn't stay committed to the Pentecostal thing, because there was clearly something wrong with it, and I just have never been able to find a priest that was um, willing to help me. He said he had attended some of the local one of he attended local parishes in the area, and was left feeling like it was no different than than what he had been raised in. So so he felt like he was in exile, a very strange exile where he has a desire to become a member of Catholicism, but still has questions about it and doesn't have anybody who's willing to teach him. So I thought that this was somewhat providential, that but I had no idea exactly how providential it would be until later. So by the end of my 2 day stretch on my schedule, I asked, we would have, he would ask me questions, and I would tell him what I knew to the extent, and I would make sure to tell him, it's like, look, like I can tell you, I can try to answer your questions to the best of my ability, and but if we get to a question where I may not know the answer 100%, um, I'd have to I'd have to defer you to someone who would know. And so I asked him if he would be interested in speaking to a priest. I told him because I happen to know a few, and where I go to church with my family, they happen to all be professors, professors of logic, of theology, moral theology, systematic theology, Thomistic theology, Latin, right? So traditional stuff, and they know their stuff. Um, so I asked Jerry if he would be open, if he would, with his permission, I would be happy to reach out to the chaplain of the parish to see if we could organize someone to visit with him to answer any of his other questions. And I did make sure to tell him that, if you would like me to do that, please let me know, but know that in doing so, it, it would, like, do you have do you feel that you have, like, do you have a desire to be baptized? And he said, yeah. He told me that he wanted to be, like, he told me he wanted to be Catholic, but he still had questions, and he wanted to make sure that he had the answers to his remaining questions. And he brought up how it's like, uh, I think, if I can recall, one of the things he said to me was, "I'm not sure, yeah, I'd like to be Catholic, but I don't know that I'm worthy, or that I've lived a life where y'all would want me." And oh, let me tell you, that really, that hit me, because this poor guy has no idea that he has no idea of, like, the depths of Christ's love for us. And so I said to him, just to try to keep the good humor that he had, um, I asked, why you say that, Jerry? Have you ever, do you know, has anyone ever told you about Saint Augustine? Like, do you know about Saint Augustine? He was a total wreck himself, and Saint Ambrose was happy to have him. Um, and so I told him, it's like, whatever you think is going to keep you from it, like, don't let it keep you from peace. If you're looking for peace, and you know that you can find it with Jesus, and if you if you've come to the point where you think that the Catholic Church is where you're going to have peace with Jesus, then don't ever think that there is no impediment aside from attachment to our sins. And he was like, oh well, he's like, I'm at the point where, like, I'm at the point in my life where there's no, I've already started reaping everything I've sowed. So, um, and he said, in one way, I feel like I've made peace with the fact that I'm gonna go, that I'm gonna be gone soon. Um, but Jerry expressed how he wasn't, where he still had that little shred of doubt, and he expressed a true desire to have that quelled. So he gave me permission to reach out to my parish chaplain. Now, the way that my schedule works is I will have these 3 days off in the middle of the week. And um, sorry. So I'll have these 3 days off in the middle of the week. And I usually spend that time researching for this, for the live stream and for whatever essay I'm writing, and I'll work on essays during that time, do some reading, meditation, rosary, all that stuff. So I was away from work for a period of 3 days, and upon returning, uh, it was it was a Thursday. It was a Thursday in the end of June. In fact, I think it was the last Thursday in June. I came back, and he was very lethargic, very difficult to arouse, was having a great deal of pain, and spent most of his day sleeping and resting. At some periods, was not even arousable for meals. And so, the 3 days that I was off, I had been in correspondence with our chaplain, sort of coordinating, and I tried to let Jerry know, that Father was willing to come and visit him. And unfortunately, like, I could tell it was really difficult for him to kind of comprehend. So I was worried that he may not make it. So I reached, that it might be getting to the end, and so I reached out to Father to let him know this is his current situation. I don't know how much long he has left. It's up to you, Father, if you still wish to come and see Jerry. And Father had not yet replied to me that day. So, and the evening and the morning was the next day. So I come in the next day for my second day in my 2-day stretch. And Jerry was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, alert, oriented times 4, was able to still have deep, interesting, meaningful conversation about high concepts. So I reached back out to Father, and I said, Father, he is awake, he is conscious, he has high cognitive functionality right now. We just had a discussion about a whole bunch of very interesting things. And I said, I think this is what we call the surge. This could be his last good day. So if you are still willing, Father, please do come. And he said, I will be there in the afternoon, because he also teaches at the seminary. So after classes were over, he came to visit. Now, while we're waiting for Father to come and visit, what was it? Oh, I brought two books. I gave Jerry two books prior to my 3 days off. I brought him a Baltimore Catechism, because Jerry had told me that he didn't finish high school, so his reading comprehension was so. So I brought him a Baltimore Catechism. It's pretty simple, question answer format. I told him not to be off put by the illustrations. They are technically intended for children, but they are nevertheless useful and help to help illustrate certain points. So I gave him that, and I gave him a copy of The Secrets of the Rosary, because during our conversation earlier in the week, when I went back in to ask him what he meant by half Catholic, he reached into his hospital gown and he pulled out one of those what are they called? One of a ball chain rosary with a pardon crucifix and Benedict medal for the centerpiece. And so he's like, I've got a rose. Oh, and no, it wasn't a pardon crucifix. It was a reliquary crucifix that had a relic containing mud from the catacombs in Rome. So he knew what the rosary was. He didn't he tried praying it to the best of his ability based on the little bits that he was able to gather with the limited resources he had. He had been in the healthcare system for a very long time, for a number of months, and so he wasn't able to procure for himself materials to help him learn how to really say the rosary. So I brought him a copy of Secrets of the Rosary, because it has a method, a short method and a longer method. And he was able to read some of it before he had his Thursday decline. So we'll do our Christopher Nolan time warp back to his last Friday. So he's alert, oriented, times 4 on Friday. Father is on his way. And so while we're waiting for him, after I had finished some of my duties, I went to take a few minutes to spend some time with him. And I asked him how the early part of his week was. The other staff members had told me that he had had a good week up until the Thursday. So he shared that he was able to read a little bit of Secrets of the Rosary, and then he decided to share with me something a little more intimate that he hadn't told me before. He said to me, he started off by saying to me, "I don't want you to think that I'm crazy when I tell you what I'm about to tell you." And I said to him, "Lucky for you, I'm a man who believes in miracles. So whatever it is, you can throw it at me and I'll catch." So he shared with me that a few years ago, a few years prior to him coming to us, he had seen a woman in white. And he said that, and the way, and this is a direct quote. He said she looked like she was shining bright like the sun, but not quite exactly as bright as the sun. Like she was really shining, but she wasn't shining to where you had to look away. Um, and that on other occasions, he had seen these blue orbs, these little blue shining orbs that would hover over his shoulder, that he would sometimes catch a glimpse of when he was looking in a mirror. Now, of course, given the history with alcohol, um, you do have to take it with some grain of salt, right? You have to play devil's advocate, with the supernatural sometimes, because um, you know we always have to be careful of being deceived. With that being said, he said that it was because I saw this white lady that I started to look into Mary. I started to go online and research about Mary. So even if even if it was an experience that was induced either by alcohol or by withdrawal from alcohol during his periods of attempted sobriety, um, either way, the fruits, and and I brought this up. He had told Father, and so I brought it up in my conversation with Father, to just to kind of discern, um, to discern with the help of his judgment on it. And Father said that, regardless, clearly the fruits of it are good, because here we are, right? Here I am, a priest, here to help him, to help minister to his soul. And it's brought, it regardless of its origins, it has brought him to the Catholic to the Catholic faith. At least, so far intellectually. Now, uh, so around 5 in the evening, Father finally arrives, and he texted me to tell me that he was here, and so I rushed down to help escort him up, and he wasn't there. So and there's only one elevator. There's only one elevator accessible to visitors to get you up to the second floor. So I go back up the elevator, and I go back down the hall, and I don't see him. And so I go to at least let Jerry know that Father's coming. Father's almost here. He just came in the building, and sure enough, there was Father. So I don't know. I don't know if Father was transported or what, because there was only one. There was really only one way. Um, unless he wrapped around the other way, but still, if I had only just missed him, like the front desk lady told me, he would have come off of the same elevator I went down on. So I don't know. I don't know. So Father sits in there Father sits in there with Jerry for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And after their conversation, when Father goes to leave, he stops by. Oh, he stops over to me and he tells me that that he can come and visit next week if he is still here, and that in the event that he is not, in the event that he is not doing well, or that he's declining, or that his time is running short, Father gave me permission to perform a conditional baptism. So with that, I was off. I was off that Saturday, Sunday, and I came back. I came back that Monday, and he was not doing well. Jerry was not doing well. He was very unresponsive. He was still breathing, but he was not. He was not interacting. Had a blank stare. Wasn't tracking my finger or a light or anything. And so I was about to call the hospice nurse, because usually in these situations you defer to the hospice staff that comes to visit. So she made it in shortly after I was in to assess him. She performs her assessment, and she confirms for me that it probably is getting pretty close to his time. So I made sure that I brought my holy water with me that day, and a prayer book um, that has a small office for the dying, for the dead and the dying. And when once I had received that confirmation, and after the hospice nurse finished with what she was doing, I gave him his conditional baptism, according to the permission granted to me by my chaplain. And then an hour after doing that, my nurse's aide came out, and she came up to me and she whispered and said, um, I think he's gone. So I go in to do now, as a licensed practical nurse in a skilled facility. LPNs are not permitted to pronounce. So all I can do is go in and assess whether or not there is a pulse. Now, for those who don't know, there's different what are called code statuses. So if you're a full code, it means that in the event that you go completely unresponsive, that we are to initiate CPR. A DNR is known as a do not resuscitate order, and this is a different code status that will specify, in the event of arrest or loss of consciousness or loss of any other signs of life, that it'll stipulate what you can or cannot do. And most of the time, a DNR will say, I do not want to be resuscitated. I do not want CPR. I do not want IVs. But they can be modular. Some of them are flexible. His was a flat do not resuscitate. So and so this also legally covers the medical staff, because otherwise, without a DNR, you are assumed to be full code, and if something happens, then we go into action. So we went in, and he he was paler than he was when I had first been in that morning, and very cold. Modeling had set in his lower extremities, and there was no pulse, no radial pulse, no apical pulse, no signs of breathing. So I reached out to the hospice nurse who had just been there. I told her. She said that she would be there as soon as she can to do the pronouncement, and that she would notify the family and the physician. And it's one of the nice things of having hospice is they can do all those things. So one of the things that I noticed while I was assessing him was that he had a tear in his eye. So he was kind of laying in bed, with his head slightly turned, and so he had a tear that had pooled in the corner of his eye. Sorry. I'm trying to keep it together for y'all. But if push comes to shove, I have a box of tissues down here. So after we got him all cleaned up, got him straightened out in bed, I made him presentable, I noticed that Father had given him one of these, a smaller one. He gave him one of these that he had around his neck. So I found his rosary, and I placed the rosary in his hand, his right hand, and yeah. And then I notified Father, asked him to say a mass for his soul. Yep, here we go. Tissue time. All right, so so that's the story of Jerry. So if I go, let me go and search something up here. Let me pull up my calendar. For June 2026. All right, so the Thursday, hold on, I need one more tab. Bear with me. I need one more tab here. 1962 calendar of feasts. All right. Okay. So let's go. June. All right. So Thursday, the Thursday that that he had his his first really bad day of lethargy was the 25th of June, which was the day after the feast of the Nativity of John the Baptist. So Thursday was the feast of Saint William the Abbot. So Saint William Abbot. I'll bring it up so everyone can see here. All right, so yeah, Montevergine, Saint William the Abbot. This is my first time just looking. Oh, okay, that's actually kind of funny. um, yeah, interesting. So, the miracle of the wolf apparently is a legend that is attached to Saint William Abbot, um, where the wolf had hunted and killed the donkey the saint was using for towing and other tasks of burden, and that the saint then turned to the wolf and ordered him to offer himself to do all the donkey's previous tasks in penance, and that the wild beast then reportedly became tame upon the command. And the people who met the saint were astonished to see such a docile wolf. Um, so, you we could say, the wolf, it was ravishing, right? Or it was. There could be some symbolism there, possibly some correspondence. Um, so Friday that he revived and spoke with Father was the feasts of Saints John and Paul, who were martyrs. Let's see. Let's look up Saints John and Paul. I just want like a brief brief little thing. So John and Paul, they were martyred under Julian the Apostate. Um, they were beheaded secretly, it looks like. I don't see anything particularly pertinent. Um, but I think, let's see, let's look at. So he passed away. He passed away on the feast of Saints Peter and Paul. Wow. I'm sorry. This is my first time like um, looking to see what feasts, because again, when you have when you start looking at the world with Catholic sight, the Catholic Ethea, the sight according to the whole, You could also say when you start looking at everything through the hermeneutic of the Holy Cross, which I've explained in previous videos, you start to notice the hand of providence in things. And most of the time, it's always in retrospect that it comes to a head. Very infrequently does it happen the moment it's happened. Like, very infrequently does the connection get made in you, that it's happening, unless you have really done a lot to strive for your own personal holiness. Um, let's go. Liturgical year. Arranger. Peter and Paul. Oops. Let's see. So Saints Peter and Paul, that's going to need to be time after Pentecost. Holy Trinity. Okay. No, this isn't helping. It's not helping. Please bear with me, y'all. Let's try this again. I need the proper of the saints. Action of the proper of the time of the see. That's not helping anything. Okay. So basically, the Feast of Saints Peter and Paul, that's a hugely important feast day. Very important feast day. I don't have my missal, to where I could at least read y'all the blurb at the top of the heading for this feast, for us to be able to see what connection there is. But just kind of off the top of my head, clearly um, there is, um, it being such an important feast day, there's bound to be some significance to it. And so if I come across, and I'll be at some point, this live stream will become an essay that will be up on the Substack. So again, if you haven't subscribed to the Substack already, please do so. You can follow the link down below to take you there, if you haven't subscribed already, just so that you know when I finish it and publish it. And by the time I get around to finishing that essay, I'll have done the rest of this deep dive into any potential signal graces related to his passing and the timeline, and its relationship with the liturgical year. But I should mention, and I know it might trigger some, but you just have to bear with me. The priest who came and gave permission for me to do conditional baptism for Jerry was a priest of the Society of St. Pius X. My family, we have been attending the parish at their seminary in Virginia since 2013 when they laid the cornerstone and blessed the bells. I've carried my grandfather. I carried my grandfather's casket into their cemetery and laid him to rest in their cemetery. So all this infighting and everything that's currently happening in the Catholic Church because of the consecrations that happened July 1st on the Feast of the Most Precious Blood. Uh, I'm I am not interested in. So if there's anyone who's going to go into the comments to scream at me for being a schismatic, you can go elsewhere. I am not interested in your commentary. Um, my family's blood now waters the soil the of the seminary, of their seminary, and my job as a husband and as a father of future children, when God is willing to give us children, is to keep the faith. And I am under a moral obligation to place my family where I know we can get the faith undoctored, unadulterated. Um, and in this part of Virginia, there really isn't anywhere but the seminary. So for the naysayers against the society, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. If you want a more detailed if you want more details about my thoughts about the whole thing, I recently did an interview over on M. Valenti's channel, which I'll try to link in the description. But yeah, it was a society priest who came. It was a society priest. Um, and the reason I opted for for a society priest was because in the past, when I've tried to intercede for a patient during pandemic, um, none of the local priests could be bothered to come and administer sacraments to the few Catholic patients that I've had in the past. Um, and so I knew though that the society, despite the pandemic, they kept going. They didn't stop. They didn't they didn't withhold the sacraments from the faithful in a time of great need, while the rest of the church was trying to make you think it was a mortal sin if you didn't take the jab, and emptied the holy water founts and um, and closed the doors to churches, to the sanctuaries, and cut off people's access to the sacraments. Only the SSPX were open during the pandemic, and they took measures. They took measures to reduce spread and everything. They had outdoor masses, car park masses, and then, like I said earlier, and when the virulence of the disease was less, they went back into the chapel and continued. And so, yes, I deferred to a society priest because I knew that they would come. Um, I even, my great great grandmother, my mother's side of the family is Catholic as well. Unfortunately, my immediate grandparents on her side of the family are not, um, they're not practicing Catholics. Um, but my great grandmother was. She was on her deathbed, and my grandparents didn't even think that she needed extreme unction because they've become lukewarm. And it took and so in order for my great grandmother to get the sacraments, it took my mother calling a society priest from the area on the West Coast to go and administer the sacraments to my great grandmother. So God bless my great grandmother. She died in the odor of the bride of Christ. So, and thanks be to God, our friend Jerry did as well. So, why am I telling you all of this? Why go to all this length to go through this incredible story? Because it is what happened leading up to the Feast of the Precious Blood. What happened with Jerry is 100% the bare minimum manifestation of Sophiurgy. Everything that we've talked about for 4 years on this channel, everything we've talked about, everything Tomberg talks about when he talks about sacred magic, what I call Sophiurgy. The story of Jerry is an illustration of the bare minimum for something to be called sacred magic, to be called Sophiurgy, to be called a work of wonder, because it is a work of wonder. And this was all something that I took with me when I went on retreat. Here's a picture of the seminary. Sadly, because of the drought at the time that I was there, the pond that you see above my head was bone dry. And there's a number of other properties nearby that also have ponds, and their ponds were also bone dry. It's just been very dry here in Virginia, where I think we're still in a drought, technically. Meanwhile, they want to still build data centers to gobble up what little water we have left in the water table. So this was where I was during my time on retreat. And it was absolutely incredible. But it was really important, and then it was probably a good thing and a providential thing that I went, because I took all that had occurred with Jerry, and I brought it with me, to place it as part of my discernment. So when you go on these retreats, they're a 5 to 6 day retreat. I mean, it's like 5.5 days. Are we good? Can everybody hear me? Um, just let me know in the chat. All right. It should be reset. So just let me know. All right. That's okay. So as I was saying, I had during this retreat, I had a tremendous experience that was very comparable to a Eucharistic experience I had a few years ago here at this um, here at this seminary. Okay. Um, so for all the people out there who say that who ask the question, where are the society's miracles? Um, they're not. They're there. They're just um, you know, only a faithless generation asks for a sign, right? So, and I've actually had quite a few. There's been a few things that have happened. Even the very first day my family attended, when we went for the Easter Sunday Mass, where they blessed and laid the cornerstone of the seminary, which at the time was just a few concrete slabs in the ground. There was stuff that happened then too. But anyhow, um, so I took this experience with Jerry with me into the retreat. And after you go through the confession and the communion on the third day, then the retreat masters begin instructing you about how to make good resolutions so that you can carry the spirit of the retreat onward. So I had a suspicion that that was going to be sort of on the docket. Again, this was my first Ignatian retreat. I had a brief memory of the general structure of it from flipping through a copy of it that I have. And they did a really good job of tailoring it for the laity, because technically it was originally meant for religious. But a Father Berial, who was a priest who knew Archbishop Lefebvre and had been on mission in Africa with Archbishop Lefebvre in the 20s and 30s. He created a short 5-day, 6-day version for the laity to make it possible for the laity to participate in the spirituality of the Ignatian exercises. Um, so we so I brought this in, and once it was time to start thinking about resolutions and to discern what resolutions to make, one of the things that I discerned very heavily was whether or not it was time yet to share this story with you all. And after consulting with priests about the events with Jerry, I feel that there are graces to be had, and that's the other thing. That's the other thing that's so important to remember about Sophiurgy, sacred magic, is you have to, like, if the goal is the give me one moment. All right. The ultimate point, the ultimate purpose, the fundamental principle animating Sophiurgy, animating sacred magic, is the salvation of souls. Everything that a sacred magician or a Sophiurgist is doing must be towards the salvation of souls. And it has to start first and foremost with yourself. You have, like, as a Sophiurgist, you have to be living a life of virtue, or at least doing your best to live a life of virtue according to the teachings and precepts of the Catholic Church. And that's not just my opinion. We see this. This is what Tomberg talks about when he talks about not dispensing with tradition, with the church's traditions, and with the church's teachings, or dispensing with scripture. Testing. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I think we will be. I think we'll be retiring OBS here pretty soon. I'm so sorry. I've been watching the sound bar, and as soon as I saw it stop, I was like, oh no, not again. Anyhow, but as I was saying, everything everything that the church does is for the salvation of souls. Everything that we have to do is, like, we have to do our part to save our souls. We have to run the race, like Paul says, right? We have to run the race before we can help others in charity. And if you don't have that, like, if you're not living the Catholic life the way you're supposed to be living it, you cannot hope. You can't even hope to perform works of wonder, however small, however hidden, or however overt and incredible. Without the basics of Catholic living, Sophiurgy is impossible. It's as simple as that. And this, and I'm not a perfect Catholic by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, heavens to Betsy. We're all sinners, and we're all doing our best. But as long as we are doing everything that we can, and as long as we are doing everything that we can to grow in holiness and to maintain the Catholic life, if you're not maintaining the Catholic life, you cannot have the Catholic sight. And if you don't have the Catholic sight, or if you can't develop the hermeneutic of the Holy Cross, you cannot become an instrument through which God works. Because that's the ultimate goal of Sophiurgy. Sophiurgy is this intersection between theurgy, thaumaturgy, and natural philosophy. This is something that I'm currently working on, because I'm trying to prep for the next installment of the Wondrous Works of Wisdom essay series. So that's just a rough Venn diagram sketch for you. Sophiurgy sits in the middle of theurgy thaumaturgy, and the working of creation. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure. I'll figure out how the Greek works for that, so that it's consistent and becomes a good illustration. Um, so yeah, you can't you can't have Catholic sight unless you're living a Catholic life, and you can't be a Sophiurgist unless you have Catholic sight. And so like this was such a tremendous grace. Um, and for the 4 years that I've been running this channel, I have always wondered how the opportunity to put all of this into practice was going to come to me. And I've prayed. I had prayed to be able um, to be receptive to the graces with which to step up to the plate, and to be cognizant of when the time came, and by God's good grace and Our Lady's help, I was indeed aware of the potential of this moment with Jerry. I was keenly aware that this might be it. This could be it. So some takeaways, and then I'll get to all y'all's comments aside from the confirmations about the audio. I'll get to everyone's comments here in a moment. But the main takeaways for tonight, if you learn anything from this at all, live an unapologetic Catholic life to the bone. Doing so will garner you the Catholic sight, a Catholic apprehension of reality, and a sight according to the whole. And having this sight will allow you to recognize when you are placed where God wishes you to act, and that it all must be geared towards the salvation of souls. If you look at every healing that takes place in Scripture, especially in the New Testament, the result of the healing is what? The result of the healing is conversion. What does Christ say to them? What does Christ say to the sick that he heals? Go and sin no more. That is a call to conversion. That is a call to maintaining a life striving for holiness, striving for sanctification, striving for heaven. So, as a Sophiurgist, whatever opportunity comes where God is asking you to perform and act, it must be geared towards that person's salvation. If by God's grace he wills that you enact a miraculous healing, if it does not bring about that person's reversion or conversion to Christ's church, to the truth, then it is not from the divine. By your fruits you shall know them. It's not strictly limited to individuals. It's also this warning, this criterion for discernment also applies to our actions. By the fruits of our actions we will know whether they are of God or the diabola. So, and it doesn't have to be anything flashy. What else have we learned with this episode? We've seen that in the most basic circumstance, such as Jerry's, where you have someone who is wishing for the salvation of their soul, um, and if you are in a position to do something about it, you need to act. You need to be willing to act. You need to be willing to engage. You need to be willing to be honest. You know, I was very blunt and frank. You know, kind and polite and friendly. But honest. When he would ask me a question, I told it to him straight, in no uncertain terms, but in a way that was accessible to him, in a way that was friendly to him, in a way that expressed my care for him. And this is what sets Catholics apart from Protestant Bible thumpers. And then sometimes circumstances require that you defer to a higher authority. You know, because I knew that I couldn't necessarily, as far as I understood at the time, I wasn't confident in my knowledge that I was permitted to baptize him. And so all the more reason why I reached out to Father, because he would at least be able to speak with Jerry and determine whether or not Jerry's disposition warranted the bare minimum for a conditional baptism, to which Father gave the affirmative. And that all came about from keeping the hermeneutic of the Holy Cross, from keeping the Catholic apprehension of reality in front of you, in front of myself, every waking moment of every day, which is fostered by the Catholic life, by Catholic spirituality, by a life of prayer, by a life of penance, by the strive for holiness. And even though I am no saint, you know, you're not required, like, we're required to become saints, because only saints are in heaven, right? But we can never be sure if we're, you know, we can never be sure without risking the sin of presumption. So it's always best to maintain that humility, which again comes from living the truly Catholic life. So this is all basics. This is all basic 101 Sophiurgy. What happened with Jerry is the most concrete experience that I have had so far, illustrating what Sophiurgy is. And I don't know what comes next. It's in God's hands. My job as an aspiring Sophiurgist, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and say that this one instance officially makes me a Sophiurgist. No, maybe 3 or 5, you know, and it might take the rest of my life before I'm graced with the opportunity to be God's instrument again. Um, but yeah, but this is the mindset, and so now, even though it's just been this one experience, even now, I can I can say with greater confidence than I have ever had before, um, that it Sophiurgy is real, sacred magic is real. Tomberg wasn't playing around. Tomberg wasn't just shooting the breeze, throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what stuck. Sure, he got a few things wrong about, Tomberg got a few things wrong. Like, he unfortunately held to Chardinism somewhat. He had like a quasi Chardinistic view of evolution and science and so on and so forth, and the ultimate end of the cosmos and of us. Um, and also he Tomberg errs on the question of reincarnation, as far as I can tell. Although he seems to have a very strange and very idiosyncratic notion of reincarnation in which reincarnation may not even be the proper word, but it was the only word that he knew. But that's a subject for another study, another time. But when it comes to the subject of what sacred magic is, and like all the prerequisites for it before you can perform it, um, after this experience with Jerry Tomberg, he was prayer, prayer, and strive for holiness within the precepts of the Catholic faith. Um, that's all. Like, that's the basics. That's the basics. Everything else, like, you know, composing prayers and stuff, like, you can do that. I managed to compose some prayers, kind of, if you want to call it spontaneously. I don't know if it's the right word, um, but it was more like, not automatic writing. But at the end of the Ignatian exercises, there's what's called a colloquy, which is, you're talking to God or whatever. And so, when you're doing that, um, when I'm doing that, I like to have a notebook in front of me, and I like to write out what it is that comes to mind. And I don't know that I'm supposed to share any of the ones from retreat. That they might just be for me and me alone. Um, but a highly recommended practice, which can, in a way, could be classified as a form of Sophiurgy. So yeah, that's what happened. That's what happened. That's what happened leading up to going on the retreat, and and now, since the retreat and since making my resolutions, I'll keep them to myself. But since making my resolutions, um, it's much clearer to me now, um, and thank God that Thank God that the channel and the content on the channel has trended in the direction that it has, and that I have been coming to certain conclusions, like I have over the course of the life of this channel. And so now, and now that things are becoming much clearer, um, there's still room for exploration. There's still room for study. Still room to learn. We're always beginners. Um, there's still room to be shown more, and so we're just going to continue on. I'm just going to continue on with the help of grace. Um, because you can't do it by yourself. So we'll go ahead and take a look at comments. Scroll up a little bit here. Oh gosh, yeah, I'm so sorry about the audio stuff, guys. So terribly sorry. Like I said, we'll be switching over to StreamYard next week. If you don't want me to have the watermark that shows up on the free tier, then um, a little bit of help. If you subscribe to the Substack, it's $5 a month. That's not undoable even in today's economy. So if the content is valuable to you, if this channel and the Substack brings good fruit into your life, and if you feel that it will bring good fruit into the lives of others, and you want to see it continue, please do consider subscribing at the Sophieurgist on Substack. Again, the description is down below. $5 a month for the monthly, and then $50 a year, which basically comes to like $4.16 a month or something like that if you do it annually. And it's a great opportunity if you like snail mail. If you have a favorite fountain pen that you haven't used in a while and you want to break it out, dust it off, use it again. If you subscribe, you can dust off that fountain pen. You can use it. You can write to me, and we can have more fruitful conversations. So, Jacobot Wiseman asked, is half Catholic even possible? Catholic is not a race ethnicity. No. He meant what Jerry meant by half Catholic was he was becoming more and more convinced that Catholicism was the true version of Christianity, which it is. It's the only version of Christianity, and he just knew that because he didn't know if he was validly baptized or not. He was humble enough not to call himself fully Catholic. So that's what he meant by half Catholic. Christina Marie says, "What a gift you were able to be there. I'm blown away. How incredible you were able to do that for him. Our Holy Mother made that happen for him. An intercession." Yes, that's exactly what it was. That's Our Lady. Our Lady had it out for him. She very well may have actually appeared to him without him fully understanding. But he clearly had an idea, because you could, the way he described it, it was very much, you know how like with an eclipse, with a total solar eclipse, it's like the only time that you can look directly at the sun in a way. And then that just conjures up, if Our Lady is sometimes symbolized by the moon. Um, and so during a solar eclipse, the moon is clothed with the sun and coronated, which is why we call it the corona. Lots of symbolism there that speaks to a deeper truth. Um, yes, and so I just want to point out in Christina Marie's chat here, what a gift you were able to be there. Oh, I prayed the whole weekend I was off. I prayed that I prayed for him to still be with us by the time I made it back to work. And that prayer was answered without a doubt. 'Cause one of the things that I worried was that he would have passed away over the weekend, because I thought that since Friday was his surge, I thought that it was possible that he was not going to be there when I got back on Monday. Through prayer and by God's grace, he was still there. And again, that also ties into the whole ordeal. It the whole episode was Sophiurgical in nature. The whole thing, from the moment he asked, "Was that a miraculous medal?" That was the moment the operation of sacred magic began. For sure, I have no doubt. And but back to Christina's point, what a gift you were able to be there. And this is one of the reasons why I brought up at the beginning of stream how I occasionally in the past had resented not having a choice in my career path, and how that I ended up into nursing. And one of the reasons I ended up into nursing was obedience to my mother, to my natural mother. Um, and it is true, our mothers, so long as they performed their sacred duties as mothers, the best of their ability, and in all diligence, those are the mothers that know their children. And she just knew in some way, shape, or form that I was supposed to be, or that I had the aptitude to be in nursing. So keeping the fourth commandment, honoring mother and father, um, and with everything else that I've experienced in my life, it really has led up to this moment. Like I I'd be very hard pressed to say that it didn't. And so all the times that I had the growing resentment, um, and the temptation to leave the nursing field, um, if I had, this wouldn't have happened. If I had left nursing, I wouldn't have been there. If I had left nursing before I met Jerry, there would have been no one. There would have been no one who could have helped him die in the odor of the bride of Christ, to die in the bark of Peter, Christ's one true church, outside of which there is no salvation. So one of the things in the retreat that I also had with me to mull over, to struggle with, to discern, was indeed whether, like, is, am I in the right place? Am I in the right nursing facility currently? Um, I still have doubts about it, but I have more clarity now thanks to the assistance of the fathers at the retreat. Uh, and truly, this is another way in which Jerry's story comes to play a tremendously important role, because um, one of the things that has been kind of in the back of my mind with this channel since I started it was, you know, praying that if it's God's will that this that perhaps someday I can support my wife and I, with everything that I do here on the channel and on Substack. Leaving it in God's hands and not trying to force the issue. But and so I had posed the question during my retreat to one of the fathers there, and we discussed it, talked about it, um, came back to it at a later day after a few more spiritual exercises, and we came to the conclusion that um, I was where I needed to be for right now. It's clearly where God needs me. It's where God wants me, is in the medical field, but not so much in a way that neglects my avenues of creative expression, which is a reference to this channel and to the Substack. And so, in Jerry's story, is the collision, or not the collision, is the conjunction between my nursing experience and career and everything that has been discussed on this channel, everything that I discuss on the Substack. This was a moment where these two worlds that I had dissected suddenly came within view, under the Catholic apprehension of reality, within sight according to the whole. I was finally able, with the help of the retreat fathers, I was able to see how this channel, the research I do, the study that I do, my creative output here, the subject matter, it it conjuncts with my experience in healthcare. And so it would be a disservice to rend to wrench the one away from the other, because in Jerry's story is the marriage of these two worlds, the marriage of these two pursuits that I have. And to see that is an incredible grace in and of itself, and that I'm going to do my best to honor. And so I will remain, for as much longer as God wills me to be in nursing. I will remain And for as long as God wishes me to continue with this channel and the Substack, I will remain. And I will continue to strive to keep the two in union, which is the grace that has come from this whole episode. So while I would love to be able to give you all his Jerry's actual name, since I could not find his family to ask permission to share the story, it's unfortunate. And so I will. He's going to be in my prayers. I now say his name at Mass during the memoriam before the Nobis Quoque, in the canon leading up to the consecration. And I pray that he may be able to obtain for us those graces that we need to be able to live the lives required for us to be able to be there for others like him in the future and going forward. So I pray that this may be I pray for this live stream to be the most fruitful of all the live streams I have done to date. And again, if it has indeed given you fruit, good fruit in your life, and if you think that it will bring good fruit in the lives of others, I implore you, I deeply implore you, more than I do in previous videos, to please like, share, and subscribe. But especially share. Share this. Share this story. We live in a time where we need this. We need these reminders of God's grace, and we need them so that we are stirred up. And we need to pray that if it stirs us up, that we are ready to turn to Christ and to those means which he has given us to obtain our salvation, which is in his church, the Catholic Church. Despite all the faults in her human element that she currently suffers, it's not the first time that she has suffered this grievously, and there's no telling how long she will suffer this time. Our job is to just remain faithful to all that has been taught by the church and to dispense with whatever contradicts it. And it's on us to learn to discern what that is, to the best of our ability, and to the best that we can cooperate with those graces God gives us to make that discernment. So there you have it, my dear unknown friends. We'll see each other next week, same time, Wednesday, 7 p.m. If anything changes, I'll make sure to get a message out. But we'll see each other again Wednesday next week. We'll close with a prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. May the souls of the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Thank you. God bless.